In this video, we're going to break apart Scott Sparker's C Pro's model Swingarm rear suspension part. Basically what applies here, it will also apply to any other Spark of this new generation. In order to begin with, first of all, we have to remove the cranks. This specific model originally came with race face next to cell cranks, which synth system, but I changed them into Shimano XT from Stage Cycling, so depending on your cranks, you'll have to do the procedure. But if you are going to do maintenance of your own for a Swingarm, probably you have done it, and you know that you should always keep aware of the spacers and washers and everything which comes on your cranks in order not to offset the distance either way. So let's just do that, and we will begin from the bottom end bolt, which is 30 torques. Once removed, it will also have thick washer underneath, so be aware that it should be also removed before unscrewing the bolt on the other side. Basically, it has an axle which goes through the whole bottom of the Swingarm, and this is essential thing to notice, that it rotates from this side clockwise, where normally you would do it counterclockwise. I will also elaborate about this a bit down the road. You could have seen that it was a bolt which kind of screws on top of the axle, and axle still remains in the Swingarm. Very small and tiny torques handle should be used in order to remove the cover of the Swingarm bottom, and you can see that it looks not very beautifully because there are a lot of scratches from the dust, and even though I added a sticker, I done it a bit too late afterwards, and it was still better than nothing. We'll continue from removing the top bolts from the Swingarm, and one thing to point out here is that if you are unscrewing those bolts from the outside of the bike, that way direction of rotational movement is counterclockwise as normally. However, if you do the same thing from the inside, as you can see here, then you should go in the opposite way, which is clockwise. So this is just something to keep aware of, and you can see that here I'm just doing the same thing for the outside, and then looking from the right side of the bike, it would be counterclockwise rotation. The spacers on top of a Swingarm are neatly described, and you will definitely not mess things up as long as you will read what's written on them. So it's just an inside and outside, and you could have seen that the bolt already has not that much of a thread lock. So if you are planning to reuse the same bolts in the assembly, make sure to clean out all the thread lock. These bolts without proper thread lock tends to just loosen out and start knuckling. Next, we're removing the bolts on the main pivot points. All of those bolts has the same 30 torques. Once that axle is removed, you can remove the pivots. I'm not exactly sure what this tiny bolt does, but I had some expectations that maybe it just tightens down the fitting of this pivot. But anyways, I just loosened it down in order not to mess things out. And the left side, non-drive side, was a bit harder to remove than it was on the right side. You can see that there are quite a lot of rust, but these pivot points are still good to be reused again. So after some cleaning and so, it will be all good. You can see that it has a lot of scratches from the dust at the top of the pivot, and I could have seen it already when it was on the bike. To remove this axle, I just added 10 millimeters, which was used to unscrew it from the drive side, and just pushed it through. But at the same time, I understood that if I'm going to remove it now, it will drop down and will remain connected only through the shifting cable and the brake hose. So for that reason, I just added these ties in order to make sure it hangs. This might be hard to remove depending on how well your bearings are looking. When the bearings at the bottom becomes loose, there is an inner tube in between them, and that means that inner tube has some play from that point. If you have some knocking sound, there is a huge chance that that part is causing you that noise. You can see that here I'm showing how I already messed up this axle a while ago. I was trying to torque this axle from the non-drive side with the Torx wrench, and at the same time it just broken the inner piece of the bolt, and I was not able to continue through that side. But thankfully there is still an option to remove this axle from the drive side with 10mm Allen key, so that's a good way to remove it, thankfully, and I haven't busted my suspension. There are spacers on each of the bottom side, and there is also additional metal one on the drive side. What's remaining here is that I'm going to remove the rear shocks. I'm not exactly sure whether I should remove the air from that before removal, but you can see that it moved down a bit when I removed the air, and at the same time I just thought that maybe it will cause a bit less stress if it's not tightened. Unscrewing those bolts actually made the shocks to drop down, and you would access to that bolt at the top, but well, just because I didn't know how to do it, I did it this way. And yeah, you will also have to remove the cable in order to remove the shock. So it was first time I'm disassembling this, and in some cases I was not exactly sure how to do it, but thankfully it was all removed issues free, I would say. When everything is removed, it is essential to have a look whether there are no cracks or similar things. The reason why the shock inside had a bit of a dirt and why I looked into the frame from the inside as well is because one time I kind of lost the cover because someone hit me, and the handlebars, it just appeared to be straight into the cover, but other than that I had zero problems with that cover, and there are kind of no issues with it at all. So here is the tricky part, is that you could actually try to do this swing arm maintenance without actually removing brake hose and shifting cable, and the reason why I'm trying to do this now is because once I did it with removing it, and trust me, it was a pain in the butt to make sure those cables go through where we have to go. There are quite a lot of scratches, and on the white frame they can be visible very clearly, but that's how it goes when you have a white bike and you go into the muddy places. I'm going to replace all the bearings just because the bike itself has 5,000 kilometers already, so I better do it in the off season rather than later down the road have to figure out where that noise is coming from. I have a full service kit, and you could have seen how I showed it came with updated axle for the top of the shock, so that's a good thing to know. Other than that, it was a disassembly of Scotter C model. Other than that, we are going to remove and replace all those bearings with new ones, as well as other parts in the swing arm. Stay tuned.